everyone. So today we will be answering the question which was asked on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago. I've got Dave Buchanan here with me, who's been teaching all around the world in almost every continent now. You can start now.
Okay, cool. I think it's really important, first off, to thank Gosha for setting this up. It takes a lot of work, but also to reflect on the fact that the answers you guys gave on the replies on LinkedIn, they were all pretty good, which makes my job harder. However,
right?
And
there was so many answers as well.
It was a popular post, I have to say, and that highlights potentially how controversial the world of AFO is. Gosha and I had a discussion 6 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that, on why I thought 90-degree AFOs were out of the window. They should no longer exist. That's my bias, okay? And actually things have moved on a lot, and you guys on all of your answers have shown that, absolutely shown that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change camera. So fantastic comments online on LinkedIn, and I'm going to try and fill the holes in some of the comments that were there, not because you didn't know the answers, just because they didn't come up. The full foot plate is a massive subject amid an even more massive subject, which is AFOs, which is mostly not supported by evidence or not reported well in the evidence. One of the first points we saw, and we've just got to get used to that, we need to do more research. One of the first points that were raised was about toe clawing and perhaps full foot plates causing that. It might be the geometry of the AFO that's doing it, the fact that it might be cupping the calf muscle or irritating or cupping the tendon Achilles. That might cause a tonic response in somebody. But it may also be the fact that it's cast at I'm going to say a neutral angle and make that a bad thing. It might be cast at 90 degrees. That would probably cause, in somebody with torn foot pressure issues, sagittal plane alignment is king in these AFOs generally, okay? So get your appropriate cast angle and then raise it up, or you can use joint systems and things to help you do that and adjust things as well. That's my thing, that's a bias. A flat foot plate, in my humble opinion, like this one, could also cause significant issues with tone. I don't do these, and I see them, and I shudder when I see these, because you see this 90-degree foot plate, this 90-degree AFO has now been put into a shoe. This bends up and down. This rocks back and forward, causing instability, confidence issues. It can cause major tone issues. We think it's not evidenced. Most of this is not evidenced, unfortunately. We need to do research, so please go and verify things. It would be great. And also, because it's higher in the shoe, this bit's harder to fit in the shoe as well. So I don't like them unless they're going in a shoe which is totally flat. Again, that's my bias. Adults and children are treated generally in a lot of best practice modules, best practice documentation. Adults and kids are treated exactly the same. And the evidence, the research doesn't really differentiate that, because the evidence that we have at the moment in our clinical world generally doesn't even report how an AFO was designed. And they make significant assumptions as well in a lot of papers. Not in Elaine Owen stuff. I love Elaine Owen stuff. Elaine Owen stuff is great. We would not be where we are today without Elaine Owen stuff. I think, Gosha, we covered a bit of Elaine Owen's techniques when you came to spend a month on our course in Germany. It's great, it's brilliant. And also you can utilise, according to our initial algorithm, you can start to use ankle range of motion. That's sort of disappeared after a little while. However, I would still indicate, as someone else did on the comments, if there's range of motion there, use it. Please use it. That's my bias from my point of view. Use the range of motion you've got, as long as it's not going to fire off tone. So adults and children are very different. The child, this might be a child here, who grew up with CP, grew up with that problem, grew up with that pathology, that's their normal, they know how to cope with it. they grew up wearing AFOs and learning how to use them, blah, blah. The adult here, the bigger adult, they've had a stroke, CVA, Schlaganfall. They've had this presentation thrust upon them overnight, and now they have to learn how to use it. That's one of the reasons they are not the same patient group. And you have other more complex groups or less complex groups as well, and we sort of treat them all similarly. I think we should look at that and do some research on it. Seth has it all in a lot of his comments there. Full foot plates are a lot about stance phase control, stance phase stabilisation, allowing a stable entry into swing phase. But if the foot plate's too stiff, as someone else noted, that can cause other issues, people rolling into low gear gait, or perhaps massively hip hitching or compensating to get their leg through. Because if people have got proximal weakness, hamstring tone, anything else which causes them to maintain themselves in a flex position during gait, or with an inability to offload that leg to go into swing phase, then they will tend to compensate using hip hitching, lateral swing, anything like that, lots of things like that. So if they are doing that in your new AFO, and the only thing you've changed perhaps is give them a fully stiff foot plate, or a plastic foot plate. Carbon stiff is different to plastic stiff. Look at that. Look at the sagittal angle to make sure that that's right or appropriate. There's nothing right. Appropriate for the individual in front of you, that the heel raise is right, that the pitch of the shoe is right, and everything fits together. Every foot plate affects third rocker, no matter how floppy, flexible or stiff it is. They all get in the way of third rocker. And also fourth rocker, if you're into that. That's my podiatric medicine head popping out. So ground clearance through crouch weakness, hip control weakness. You need to show some care and make sure that those compensations are either not happening or controlled to a certain extent. And don't go down the route of just sticking a razor on the other side so that the other one can swing through just because you want to use a full foot plate. I have seen that. Learn to assess tone, learn to assess clonus, spasticity, plus range of motion and muscle strength, because that will help you to decide what sort of AFO this individual in front of you, this person, the story at the beginning, the middle and the end of this whole process, help you choose something appropriate to them. And footwear is an adjunct. It's not just an adjunct, it's a major aspect of how an AFO works. So make sure you read some of the research on footwear shape and design. Nikki Edison, now Associate Professor Nikki Edison, has done a lot of work on this. There's a lot of it about. These are the areas where there is good research on these things. And if you're thinking again, another point I've got at the bottom of my notes here is on forefoot pressure. Again, if you've got forefoot pressure, and I'll repeat this because this is something I see time and time again, check that sagittal plane angle of the AFO. 90, I'm not a fan of that. Make sure it's between R1 and R2. If you don't know what R1 and R2 is, then look up Tardieu or look up modified Ashford scale to see how you're going to angle your AFO to fit your individual with CP or whatever other version that might give them tone, like Charcot-Marie tooth, MS, things like that. 90 degree is where you get most of that pressure, I think. Then consider padding once you've got all of the technical stuff out of the way. How did I do?
Really good. Thank you very much. I think you've touched so many different subjects. That is a great time to introduce more subjects coming, and hopefully Dave will be able to answer some of more questions. But this is something that will definitely get people to think about the complexity of the AFO or CAFO which they're using, because this is the key to get a good orthoses, and starting with toe plates as well.
Cool. Well, at one point I didn't say, if the angle's not right, then you'll start to see mid-tarsal deviation, then you'll get that lateral pain, which a lot of people extend the lateral wall for. Get the sagittal plane first right, you might not get that mid-tarsal joint deviation, and that's hard for me to say. And that's one of the tenets of what I would look at as a modern, effective ankle foot orthosis prescription. And then I do other stuff, which is joints and things, but that's really, yeah, that's going against the grain.
That's something not for 5 minutes. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Pleasure.